sometimes like a doll, and sometimes like a workbox, and was always on the shelf next above the one she was looking at. And this one is the most provoking of all. But I'll tell you what, she added as a sudden thought struck her. I'll follow it up to the very top shelf of all. It'll puzzle it to go through the ceiling, I expect. But this plan failed. The thing went through the ceiling as quietly as possible, as if it were quite used to it. Next, please. Donna, I believe.
Were you a child or a teetotum? The sheep said as she took up another pair of needles. You'll make kids soon if you go on turning round like that. She was now working with 14 pairs at once, and Alice couldn't help looking at her in great astonishment. How can she knit with so many? The puzzled child thought to herself. She gets more and more like a porcupine every minute. Can you row? The sheep asked, handing her a pair of knitting needles as she spoke. Yes, a little, but not on land and not with needles, Alice was beginning to say, when suddenly the needles turned into oars in her hands, and she found that they were in a little boat gliding along between banks. So there was nothing for it but to do her best. Feather, said the sheep, as she took up another pair of needles. This didn't sound like a remark that needed any answer, so Alice said nothing, but pulled away. There was something very queer about the water, she thought, as every now and then the oars got fast in it and would hardly come out again. Feather, feather, the sheep cried again, taking more needles. You'll be catching a crab directly. Dear little crab, thought Alice, I should like that. Didn't you hear me say feather? The sheep cried angrily, taking up a bunch of needles. Indeed I did, said Alice. You've said it very often and very loud. Please, where are crabs? In the water, of course, said the sheep, sticking some of the needles into her hair as her hands were full. Feather, I say. Why do you say feather so often? Alice asked, at last, rather vexed. I'm not a bird. You are, said the sheep. You're a little goose. This offended Alice a little, so there was no more conversation for a minute or two, while the boat glided gently on, sometimes among beds of weeds, which made the oars stick fast in the water, worse than ever, and sometimes under trees, but always with the same tall river banks frowning over their heads. Next, please.
Oh, please, there are some scented rushes, Alice cried in a sudden transport of delight. There really are, and such beauties. You needn't say please to me about him, the sheep said, without looking up from her knitting. I didn't put him there, and I'm not going to take him away. No, but I meant, please, may we wait and pick some? Alice pleaded. If you don't mind stopping the boat for a minute. How am I to stop it? Said the sheep. If you leave off rowing, it'll stop itself. So the boat was left to drift down the stream as it would, till it glided gently in among the waving rushes. And then the little sleeves were carefully rolled up, and the little arms were plunged in elbow deep to get hold of the rushes, a good long way down before breaking off. And for a while, Alice forgot all about the sheep and the knitting as she bent over the side of the boat, with just the ends of her tangled hair dipping into the water, while with bright, eager eyes she caught at one bunch after another of the darling scented rushes. I only hope the boat won't tipple over, she said to herself. Oh, what a lovely one, only I couldn't quite reach it, and it certainly did seem a little provoking, almost as if it happened on purpose, she thought. That though she managed to pick plenty of beautiful rushes as the boat glided by, there was always a more lovely one that she couldn't reach. The prettiest are always farther, she said at last, with a sigh at the obstinacy of the rushes in going so far off as, with flushed cheeks and dripping hair and hands, she scrambled back into her place and began to arrange the newfound treasures. What mattered it to her just then that the rushes had begun to fade and to lose all their scent and beauty from the very moment that she picked them. Even real scented rushes, last only a very little while, and these, being dream rushes, melted away almost like snow as they lay in heaps at her feet. But Alice hardly noticed this. There were so many other curious things to think about. Anne?
Okay. They hadn't gone much further before the blade of one of the oars got fast in the water and wouldn't come out again. So Alice explained it afterwards. And the consequence was that the handle of it caught her under the chin. And in spite of a series of little shrieks of "oh, oh, oh" from poor Alice, it swept her straight off the seat and down among the heap of rushes. However, she wasn't a bit hurt and was soon up again. The sheep went on with her knitting all the while, just as if nothing had happened. "It was a nice crab you caught," she remarked, as Alice got back into her place, very much relieved to find herself still in the boat. "Was it? I didn't see it," said Alice, peeping cautiously over the side of the boat into the dark water. "I wish I hadn't let go. I should so like a little crab to take home with me." But the sheep only laughed scornfully and went on with her knitting. "Are there many crabs here?" said Alice. "Crabs and all sorts of things," said the sheep. "Plenty of choice. Only make up your mind. Now, what do you want to buy?" "To buy?" Alice echoed in a tone that was half astonished, half frightened, for the oars and the boat and the river had vanished all in a moment, and she was back again in the little dark shop. "I should like to buy an egg, please," she said timidly. "How do you sell them?" "Fivepence farthing for one, twopence for two," the sheep replied. "Then two are cheaper than one," Alice said in a surprised tone, taking out her purse. "Only you must eat both of them if you buy two," said the sheep. "Then I'll have one, please," said Alice as she put the money down on the counter, for she thought to herself, "It mightn't be at all nice, you know." The sheep took the money and put it away in a box, and then she said, "I never put things into people's hands. That would never do. You must get it for yourself." And so saying, she went off to the other end of the shop and set the egg upright on a shelf. "I wonder why it wouldn't do," thought Alice as she groped her way among the tables and the chairs, for the shop was very dark towards the end. The egg seemed to get further away the more I walked towards it. "Let me see, is this a chair? Why, it's got branches, I declare. How very odd to find trees growing here. And actually, here's a little brook. Well, this is the very queerest shop I've ever saw." So she went on, wondering more and more at every step, and everything turned into a tree the moment she came up to it. She quite expected the egg to do the same. Katrina?
Okay. Should we go on? Do we want to? Okay. Humpty Dumpty. However, the egg only got larger and larger and more human. When she had come within a few yards of it, she saw that it had eyes and a nose and a mouth. And when she had come close to it, she saw clearly that it was Humpty Dumpty himself. "It can't be anybody else," she said to herself. "I'm as certain of it as if his name were written all over his face." It might have been written 100 times easily on that enormous face. Humpty Dumpty was sitting with his legs crossed like a Turk on the top of a high wall, such a narrow one that Alice quite wondered how he could keep his balance. And as his eyes were steadily fixed in the opposite direction, he didn't take the least notice of her. She thought he must be a stuffed figure after all. "And how exactly like an egg he is," she said aloud, standing with her hands ready to catch him, for she was every moment expecting him to fall. "It's very provoking," Humpty Dumpty said after a long silence, looking away from Alice as he spoke, "to be called an egg. Very." "I said you looked like an egg, sir," Alice gently explained, "and some eggs are very pretty, you know," she added, hoping to turn her remark into a sort of compliment. "Some people," said Humpty Dumpty, looking away from her as usual, "have no more sense than a baby." Alice didn't know what to say to this. It wasn't at all like conversation, she thought. She thought, as he never said anything to her. In fact, his last remark was evidently addressed to a tree. So she stood and softly repeated to herself, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty in his place again. That last line is much too long for the poetry, she added, almost out loud, forgetting that Humpty Dumpty would hear her. Next, please, Duncan. Oh,
Don't stand there chatting to yourself like that, Humpty Dumpty said, looking at her for the first time. But tell me your name and your business. My name is Alice, but that's a stupid enough name, Humpty Dumpty interrupted impatiently. What does it mean? Must a name mean something? Alice asked doubtfully. Of course it must, Humpty Dumpty said with a short laugh. My name means the shape I am. And a good handsome shape it is, too. What, with a name like yours, you might be any shape, almost. Why do you sit out here all alone? Said Alice, not wishing to begin an argument. Why, because there's nobody with me, cried Humpty Dumpty. Do you think I didn't know the answer to that? Ask another. Don't you think you'd be safer down on the ground? Alice went on, not with any idea of making another riddle, but simply in her good-natured anxiety for the queer creature. That wall is so very narrow. What tremendously easy riddles you ask, Humpty Dumpty growled out. Of course I don't think so. Why, if I ever did fall off, which there's no chance of, but if I did, here he pursed his lips and looked so solemn and grand that Alice could hardly help laughing. If I did fall, he went on, the king has promised me with his very own mouth to send all his horses and all his men? Alice interrupted, rather unwisely. Now, I declare that's too bad, Humpty Dumpty cried, breaking into a sudden passion. You've been listening at doors and behind trees and down chimneys, or you wouldn't have known it. I haven't, indeed, Alice said very gently. It's in a book. Oh, well, they may write such things in a book, Humpty Dumpty said in a calmer tone. Next reader, please.
What you call a history of England, that is. Now take a good look at me. I am one that has spoken to a king. I am. Mayhap you'll never see such another. And to show you I'm not proud, you may shake hands with me. And he grinned almost from ear to ear as he leant forwards, and as nearly as possible fell off the wall in doing so, and offered Alice his hand. She watched him a little anxiously as she took it. If he smiled much more, the ends of his mouth might meet behind, she thought, and then I don't know what would happen to his head. I'm afraid it would come off. Yes, all his horses and all his men, Humpty Dumpty went on. They'd pick me up again in a minute, they would. However, this conversation is going on a little too fast. Let's go back to the last remark but one. I'm afraid I can't quite remember it, Alice said very politely. In that case, we start afresh, said Humpty Dumpty, and it's my turn to choose a subject. He talks about it as if it was a game, thought Alice. So here's a question for you. How old did you say you were? Alice made a short calculation and said, 7 years and 6 months. Wrong, Humpty Dumpty exclaimed triumphantly. You never said a word like it. I thought you meant how old are you? Alice explained. If I meant that, I'd have said it, said Humpty Dumpty. Alice didn't want to begin another argument, so she said nothing. 7 years and 6 months, Humpty Dumpty repeated thoughtfully. An uncomfortable sort of age. Now, if you ask my advice, I'd have said, leave off at 7. But it's too late now. I never ask advice about growing, Alice said indignantly. Too proud? The other inquired. Alice felt even more indignant at this suggestion. I mean, she said, that one can't help growing older. Next, please.
One can't, perhaps, said Humpty Dumpty, but two can. With proper assistance, you might have left off at 7. What a beautiful belt you've got on, Alice suddenly remarked. They had had quite enough of the subject of age, she thought, and if they really were to take turns in choosing subjects, it was her turn now. At least, she corrected herself on second thoughts. A beautiful cravat, I should have said. No, a belt. I beg your pardon, she added in dismay, for Humpty Dumpty looked thoroughly offended, and she began to wish she hadn't chosen the subject. If only I knew, she thought to herself, which was neck and which was waist. Evidently, Humpty Dumpty was very angry, though he said nothing for a minute or two. When he did speak again, it was in a very deep growl. It is a most provoking thing, he said at last, when a person doesn't know a cravat from a belt. I know it's very ignorant of me, Alice said, in so humble a tone that Humpty Dumpty relented. It's a cravat, child, and a beautiful one, as you say. It's a present from the White King and Queen. There now. Is it really? Said Alice, quite pleased to find that she had chosen a good subject after all. They gave it to me, Humpty Dumpty continued thoughtfully as he crossed one knee over the other and clasped his hands around it. They gave it to me for an unbirthday present. I beg your pardon, Alice said with a puzzled air. I'm not offended, said Humpty Dumpty. I mean, what is an unbirthday present? A present given when it isn't your birthday, of course. Dunna?
Just considered a little. I like birthday presents best, she said at last. Don't mind a birthday, don't you? How many days are there in a year? 365, said Alice. And how many birthdays have you? 1. If we take 1 from 365, what remains? 364, of course. Rather looked doubtful. I'd rather see that done on paper, he said. I couldn't help smiling as she took out her memorandum book and worked the sum for him. 365 minus 1, 364. Humpty took the book and looked at it very carefully. That's the right. You're holding it upside down, Alice interrupted. To be sure it was, Humpty Dumpty said gaily as she turned it round for him. I thought it looked a little queer. As I was saying, that seems to be done right, though I haven't time to look it over thoroughly just now. And that shows that there are 364 days when you might get an unbirthday present. Certainly, said Alice. And only 1 for birthday presents, you know. There's glory for you. I don't know what you mean by glory, Alice said. Humpty Dumpty smiled contemptuously. Of course you won't, till I tell you. I meant, there's a nice knockdown argument for you. But glory doesn't mean a nice knockdown argument, Alice objected. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said, in rather a scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean different things. Is that Dumpty, which is the matter? Alice was too much puzzled to say anything, so after a minute, Humpty Dumpty began again. Verbs. You're the problem. You can do anything with, but not verbs. However, I can place the whole lot. Impenetrability. That's what I said. Tell me, said Alice, what that means. Next.
Now you talk like a reasonable child, said Humpty Dumpty, looking very much pleased. I mean by impenetrability that we've had enough of that subject, and it would be just as well if you'd mention what you mean to do next, as I suppose you don't mean to stop here all the rest of your life. That's a great deal to make one word mean, Alice said in a thoughtful tone. When I make a word do a lot of work like that, said Humpty Dumpty, I always pay it extra. Oh, said Alice, she was too much puzzled to make any other remark. Ah, you should see him come round me of a Saturday night, Humpty Dumpty went on, wagging his head gravely from side to side, for to get their wages, you know. Alice didn't venture to ask what he paid them with, and so you see, I can't tell you. You seem very clever at explaining words, sir, said Alice. Would you kindly tell me the meaning of the poem called Jabberwocky? Let's hear it, said Humpty Dumpty. I can explain all the poems that ever were invented and a good many that haven't been invented just yet. This sounded very hopeful, so Alice repeated the first verse. 'Twas brillig gan the slightly toes, the gyre and gimble in the wob. All mimsy were the borough grows, and the mome rats outgribe. That's enough to begin with, Humpty Dumpty interrupted. There are plenty of hard words there. Brillig means 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the time when you begin broiling things for dinner. That'll do very well, said Alice. And slitty? Well, slitty means lithe and slimy. Lithe is the same as active. You see, it's like a portmanteau. There are two meanings packed up into one word. I see it now, Alice remarked thoughtfully. And what are toes? Well, toes are something like badgers. They're something like lizards. And they're something like corkscrews. They must be very curious looking creatures. They are that, said Humpty Dumpty. Also, they make their nests under sundials. Also, they live on cheese. And what's to gyre and to gimble? To gyre is to go round and round like a gyroscope. To gimble is to make holes like a gimlet. And the wob is the grass plot round a sundial, I suppose, said Alice, surprised at her own ingenuity. Of course it is. It's called wob, you know, because it goes a long way before it and a long way behind it. And a long way beyond it on each side, Alice added. Exactly so. Well then, mimsy is flimsy and miserable. There's another portmanteau word for you. And borough is a thin, shabby-looking bird with its feathers sticking out all round, something like a live mop. And then some rats, said Alice. I'm afraid I'm giving you a great deal of trouble. Well, Roth is a sort of green pig, but mome I'm not certain about. I think it's short for from home, meaning that they'd lost their way, you know. And what does outgrab mean? Well, outgrabbing is something between bellowing and whistling, with a kind of sneeze in the middle. However, you'll hear it done maybe down in the wood yonder. And when you've once heard it, you'll be quite content. Who's been repeating all that hard stuff to you? Anne.
Okay. I read it in a book, said Alice, but I had some poetry repeated to me much easier than that, by Tweedledee, I think it was. As to poetry, you know, said Humpty Dumpty, stretching out one of his great hands, I can repeat poetry as well as other folk, if it comes to that. Oh, it needn't come to that, Alice hastily said, hoping to keep him from beginning. The piece I'm going to repeat, he went on without noticing her remark, was written entirely for your amusement. Alice felt that in that case she really ought to listen to it, so she sat down and said, "Thank you," rather sadly. In winter, when the fields are white, I sing this song for your delight. Only I don't sing it, he added as an explanation. I see you don't, said Alice. If you can see whether I'm singing or not, you've sharper eyes than most, Humpty Dumpty remarked severely. Alice was silent. In spring, when woods are getting green, I'll try and tell you what I mean. Thank you very much, said Alice. In summer, when the days are long, perhaps you'll understand the song. In autumn, when the leaves are brown, take pen and ink and write it down. I will if I can remember it so long, said Alice. You needn't go on making remarks like that, Humpty Dumpty said. They're not sensible, and they put me out. I sent a message to the fish. I told him this is what I wish. The little fishes of the sea, they sent an answer back to me. The little fish's answer was, "We cannot do it, sir, because—" "I'm afraid I don't quite understand," said Alice. "It gets easier further on," Humpty Dumpty replied. "I sent to them again to say, it will be better to obey." The fishes answered with a grin, "Why? What a temper you are in! I told them once, I told them twice, they would not listen to advice. I took a kettle large and new, fit for the deed I had to do. My heart went hop, my heart went thump, I filled the kettle at the pump. Then someone came to me and said, the little fishes are in bed. I said to him, I said it plain, then you must wake 'em up again. I said it very loud and clear. I went and shouted in his ear." Katrina?
Humpty Dumpty raised his voice almost to a scream as he repeated this verse, and Alice thought with a shudder, I wouldn't have been the messenger for anything. But he was very stiff and proud. He said, you needn't shout so loud. And he was very proud and stiff. He said, I'll go and wake them if I took a corkscrew from the shelf. I went to wake them up myself. And when I found the door was locked, I pulled and pushed and kicked and knocked. And when I found the door was shut, I tried to turn the handle, but there was a long pause. Is that all? Alice timidly asked. That's all, said Humpty Dumpty. Goodbye. This was rather sudden, Alice thought, but after such a very strong hint that she ought to be going, she felt it would be hardly civil to stay. So she got up and held out her hand. Goodbye till we meet again, she said, as cheerfully as she could. I shouldn't know you if we did meet, Humpty Dumpty replied in a discontented tone, giving her one of his fingers to shake. You're so exactly like other people. The face is what one goes by generally, Alice remarked in a thoughtful tone. That's just what I would complain of. That's just what I complain of, said Humpty Dumpty. Your face is the same as everybody has. Two eyes, the two eyes, so marking their place in the air with his thumb. Nose in the middle, mouth under. It's always the same. Now, if you had two eyes on the same side of the nose, for instance, or the mouth at the top, that would help some. That would be some help. But it wouldn't look nice, Alice objected. But Humpty Dumpty only shut his eyes and said, wait till you've tried. Alice waited a minute to see if he would speak again, but as he never opened his eyes or took any further notice of her, she said goodbye once more, and getting no answer to this, she quietly walked away. But she couldn't help saying to herself as she went, of all the unsatisfactory, she repeated this aloud as it was great comfort to have such a long word to say, of all the unsatisfactory people I had ever met. She never finished the sentence, for at this moment a heavy crash shook the forest from end to end. Next,
Okay.
please.
All right. There's a little bit of meat here. Actually, my first frivolous remark was, did Picasso read through the looking glass?
Students of Finnegan's Wake do not have to be reminded that Humpty Dumpty is one of the book's basic symbols, the great cosmic egg whose fall, like the drunken fall of Finnegan, suggested the fall of Lucifer and the fall of man.
Wow. Huh?
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a line there that Alice said. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things.
Yeah.
I'm sure Joyce liked that if he read it, and he went ahead and did so. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there are lots of good notes on this.
Yeah.
This is really the highlight of this book, I think, is this Humpty Dumpty chapter.
Yeah.
It says here, the Humpty Dumpty episode, like the episodes about Jack of Hearts, the Tweedle Twins, and the Lion and the Unicorn, elaborate on the incidents related to the familiar nursery rhyme. Another and quite different elaboration will be found in Frank Baum's first book for children, Mother Goose and Prose. It's Peter Alexander in his excellent paper, Logic and Humor of Lewis Carroll, calls attention to a Carrollian inversion here that is easily overlooked. In real life, proper names seldom have a meaning other than the fact that they denote individual object, whereas other words have general universal meanings. In Humpty Dumpty's realm, the reverse is true. Ordinary words mean whatever Humpty wants them to mean, whereas proper names like Alice and Humpty Dumpty are supposed to have general significance. Mr. Alexander's thesis, with which one must hardly concur, is that Carroll's humor is strongly colored by his interest in formal logic. That's not the note I wanted to read. It is a person. I thought there was a note here that talked that Humpty Dumpty was based on a real person who was kind of grumpy. I can't seem to see it
Hmm.
anymore.
So Joan, I have a question for you.
Hmm.
What does Joan mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah. What does it come from?
Well, I was named after my grandfather, whose name was Joseph. And if you
Oh,
want to,
you don't know of a literal meaning for Joan?
oh, well, they gave. We used to have name books when we were little that told you what every name meant, and I
Right.
forget.
Well, I'll answer my own question for myself. So my name is Duncan.
Yes,
Duncan means brown.
yes,
Brown warrior is what it means, or brown
yes.
soldier. And actually, many names actually had meanings. We just don't use them. People don't think about them much anymore.
Well, I don't know if this book of names, when it gave what they were from any source or somebody just made them up. I don't know. But Joseph, if you go back far enough, he was in the Bible. If you want to,
Right. Yeah, there are those there is that kind of history of names, but generally not generally, not all the time, but generally um names have literal meanings. They have they're referring to objects like the name Miller.
yes, well, last names
Right.
definitely do.
And first name, many first names too. So I'm just questioning the scholar's logic on the note that you read where he says that, that proper names don't have meanings.
You know,
So let me see if
Joan is Siobhan in Irish.
Siobhan.
Siobhan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just use this information, Pete.
Well, actually, the name Alice means noble or of nobility, derived from the Old French name Alice and the Germanic name Ada Hydas. It's been popularized for literary works, especially Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So, and Anne, I think Anne will probably means grace, God's grace.
Probably. All I know is my mother was praying to Saint Anne, because I was a surprise. I was the only one. I was the only one that you had to go into hospital.
I was going to say, and her prayers were answered.
They were, yeah. My aunt was a midwife, and she used to go around in a horse and cart, and she delivered all my brothers and sisters. But I was a surprise, so my mother had to go into hospital.
Yeah.
But it was worth the wait.
Anne is the Hebrew name meaning grace, and a variation of Hannah. So that's why I knew it, because my eldest daughter I named Hannah.
Yeah.
Anne was the mother of Jesus.
That's right. Mother of Mary, wasn't it?
I thought it was Mary.
Yeah, the mother of Mary.
Mary was the mother of Jesus.
Mary is the
Yeah.
mother of Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, Anne was her mother, I think.
You could get into trouble saying that, couldn't I?
They could indeed.
And interestingly enough, Thomas means twin,
Yeah,
Aramaic.
yeah. Another biblical name. Yeah.
So, you know, it is true that in English speaking countries we've kind of for the most part forgotten all that kind of stuff. But like
Mm.
in countries like India, everybody is aware of what everybody's name means and what they refer to. And they take it quite seriously, actually.
In India, they can spend quite some time deciding what a child's name is.
Yes, yes, I know. I know from experience. Because in Japan, when you're naming a child, you have to figure it's a real complicated thing. And even most Japanese scientists, um, when it comes to naming their children, have to approach it in a very sober and esoteric manner.
Hmm.
So every time we had a child, I had to figure out a name, and it had to one be a name that was easily understood both in Japan and in the United States. And then it had to have a meaning. And then if you wrote it in the Japanese language, it had to have a certain number of strokes in it because the strokes were associated with the baby's fortune over life. So,
John, could I ask, in the notes you have there, did it
Mhm.
make any reference to that 4 lines of gibberish?
I
Twas
don't,
brillig lady toves. Is there any reference to
I'll,
that?
I'll, I'll look here. I don't remember seeing it. I had a hard time, looking at reading them while everybody was reading, to the gibberish. I think so, but give me
which
a minute to look.
which 4 lines of gibberish are you referring to, Des?
Twas brillig and the slitty toves did gyre and gimble in the wave.
Yeah.
All mimsy were the borough goes and the mome rat out grabe. Do you know what it means?
It probably there's probably notes on that when we first see the Jabberwocky
Yeah, I'm looking.
here there at the
Mhm.
beginning of the book.
Well, we know that Brillig was Brillig, it's a description of some kind of day, brilliant or whatever.
Oh,
And
here.
the slithy toves, we know the toves are nouns. They're some kind of creature, and slithy is a adjective for them. And we know that gyre and gimble are verbs. Wabe is another noun.
Is this Old English?
No, it's made up. It's nonsense.
There's a whole thing here, a whole
Yeah.
long thing of mathematical language and symbolic logic and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that you want to hear it all. It says Humpty Dumpty is a philologist and philosopher skilled primarily in linguistic matters. Perhaps Carroll is suggesting here that such types, exceedingly plentiful both then and now in the Oxford area, are seldom gifted mathematically. I don't know what that means.
Ah, I mean, he was teasing the philologist.
Mhm.
See, Lewis Carroll was fully aware of the profundity in Humpty Dumpty's whimsical discourse on semantics. Humpty takes the point of view known in the Middle Ages as nominalism, the view that universal terms do not refer to objective existences, but are nothing more than flatus vocis, verbal utterances. The view was skillfully defended by William of Ockham, and is now held by almost all contemporary logical empiricists. So there's a whole thing here about logic and mathematics and
Yeah, he invented a game of logic that he published. He was into playing, kind of making up games and visiting. He liked doing magic tricks, and his place was full of those when he died, and that he invented loads of things.
so even in logic and mathematics, where terms are usually more precise than in other subject matters, enormous confusion often results from failure to realize that words mean neither more nor less than what they are intended to mean. In Carroll's time, a lively controversy in formal logic, concerned the existential import of Aristotle's four basic propositions. Do the universal statements all A is B and no A is B imply that A is, this goes on like that.
Yeah.
Gets a little complicated.
It does get complicated, and I think that it's all based on the idea that thinking that words have some intrinsic meaning. And the reality is, at least as far as I can tell, is that Humpty Dumpty's right. Words mean what I want them to mean.
Yeah.
And this is actually how most people speak, though they don't know it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is why in Joyce, the story of the Tower of Babel is so incredibly important, because I use real simple examples, like if I say red, everyone in the group will have their own red.
Here,
And I have a unique red because I'm colorblind.
the man who is writing these notes says, I maintain that any writer of a book is fully authorized in attaching any meaning he likes to any word or phrase he intends to use. If I find an author saying at the beginning of his book, let it be understood that by the word black I shall always mean white, and that by the word white I shall always mean black, I meekly accept his ruling, however injudicious I may think it. And so, with regard to the question whether a proposition is or is not to be understood as asserting the existence of its subject, I maintain that every writer may adopt his own rule, providing, of course, that it is consistent with itself and with the accepted facts of logic. Let us consider certain views that may logically be held, and thus settle which of them may conveniently be held, after which I shall hold myself free to declare which of them I intend to hold. This view, adopted by Carroll, that both all and some simply imply existence and no leaves the question open, did not finally win out. In modern logic, only the some propositions are taken to imply that a class is not a null class. This does not, of course, invalidate the nominalistic attitude of Carroll and his egg. The current point of view was adopted solely because logicians believed it to be the most useful. So it's just a lot of complicated thinking about it. And it goes on and on.
Mm-hmm. I think the author that actually goes into this stuff in quite some detail is George Orwell, and the way he uses words in Animal Farm and in War and Peace, not War and Peace, 1984.
Mm.
You know, those both of those books are pushing us very deep into language and
Mm.
how language can be distorted. And we're watching examples of that going on a daily basis right now. So,
Well, it's, I don't know, words tell you what other words mean, I guess. Yes.
okay.
I think language in itself is such a complicated and marvelous topic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can spend your life just talking about it and thinking about it.
Let's see, Mr. Kennedy folding his arms and looking up. He's ferreting out some idea or information.
No, no. When you talk a language, I always think of Wittgenstein, who really delved into language. And
Mhm.
I think I said that before. He said the limits of my language are the limits of my world. But yeah, it's endless kind of. It's endless if you start digging into language. Yeah, but it is interesting there, where Humpty Dumpty is explaining exactly the meaning of things and the meaning of the words, and saying that he could, whatever he means the words to say, that's what it means, and it's very interesting. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
in real life, and you realize how important meaning is, and how people misunderstand each other because they
Right.
attach different feelings about words
Yeah.
or understanding of
But for
words.
the most part, most people understand words in a kind of
Pretty much, yeah.
in a normal way. Otherwise, we'll be breaking down every second. But when you go to look at the words and kind of um, look at them as they could mean this, that, and the other set. There's loads of words. I mean, cleave is one of the interesting words. If you cleave to somebody,
Mhm.
and yet cleave means splitting something in two.
Mhm.
So the more you look at words, the more you begin to kind of wonder at, the kind of it's a kind of beauty in a way, I think, it's a kind of mystery and beauty about words.
Mhm.
Some words with use can change their meaning considerably.
Mm,
Uh,
But
I
just
use I often use the example of the word fulsome.
yeah.
mm,
Um, that meaning very good, very nice, that kind of thing. But around the 12th, 13th century, that word fulsome had quite the opposite meaning, as
Mhm.
if it were spelled Foulsome.
Mm,
It was quite the opposite,
You
and it
have
has come back
Allison?
in again. Foulsome, yes. It
mm.
was quite the opposite of what we use it as today and what it was originally.
and when you think of the problems in translation of people that are translating from one language to another, how difficult that is, especially if
Yeah.
you're thinking about poetry
Mm,
or who.
mm.
Uh,
We need a very special brain, I think, to be a proper translator.
yes, yes, I think so.
Well, I think that the fact that James Joyce was a teacher of English as a second
Mm.
language was extremely important. And I think a lot of what Joyce did was he listened very carefully to his students and how they would use words or how they pronounce words, and
Mm.
the way they would say them would change the meaning. And he took great, I think he took great delight and realized that this was a gold mine of the exploration of language and how we misunderstand each other all the time. It just happened to be that people trying to learn English as a second language were a particularly uh, rich source of examples.
Mm.
Well, people evaluate translations too. They say this book was a good translation. This was the best translation.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, but I mean, like good and best or better and all those are all relative kind of things, you know. And then you have to look at who's saying this,
yeah,
and then you're away again. Like, you know, I mean, I often think of the word fantastic that it's used now everywhere. It's used in sports, it's used in fashion, it's used about films, it's used about everything. Everything is fantastic.
yeah.
A fantastic meal. That was a fantastic goal. That was in fact, a fantastic achievement. And it's just used liberally, and you know, it's meaningless in a sense. Then it becomes so.
It's pretty much the same as the word unbelievable.
It's
It's
unbelievable. Yeah,
taken
that's
quite
what.
the opposite meaning of what it is.
Oh, yeah, right. There is that. There is that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You know, that was a fantastic goal. It's unbelievable. You know.
Oh, this is going to be an odd question, but is anybody familiar with the writings of Baudrillard and
Mm,
No,
his
no,
Simulacra?
no.
Oh,
no.
One really bad, too simplistic way of summarizing it is that because of advertising
Mm.
and PR,
Yeah,
that we no longer live in the real world at all. That we live in an imitation of the real world that has
yeah,
been pumped up by all these exaggerated words like fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
And these sorts of things happen so frequently that we can no longer we're no longer in touch with the actual simple objects themselves.
It's causing enormous problems with young people.
It's causing enormous problems with young people. Well, it's
Yeah,
causing enormous problems with us too, but the young people even more because it tends to build on itself.
yeah.
And you end up with either people who believe it or people who become uh, very cynical about almost everything because they've always been taught. The real example is well, it's the exaggeration
Mm.
of everything.
Yeah,
It's the exaggeration of fashion. It's the exaggeration of how we're supposed to look.
yeah,
And so we become increasingly dissatisfied with just the plain old objects themselves. And we feel people start feeling like they're failures because they don't live at this fantastic level. Anyway, I ramble on. Are we ready to proceed a little bit more, or do we have other
yeah.
topics here?
We'll go on.
and what page are you at? Or
It's a
what
chapter.
what
We're
chapter?
begin. We're beginning chapter 7, and
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Let's see.
Got it.
Chapter 7. Who's the next reader, please?
I
Who
think
was the
it's
last
you.
bit?
I think it's you, Duncan, is it? I think
Let-
Katrina.
All right.
I
So-
finished. So Duncan, but what about Anne? Does Anne want to read?
Yeah.
Well, put me at the end. Put
And-
me last. I
Okay.
felt kind of,
No. And if you got the page, go ahead and read it.
okay, so the lion and the unicorn?
The
Yes.
Lion and the
Yeah.
Unicorn.
Okay, thanks. I will start then. The next moment, the soldiers came running through the wood at first in twos and threes, then tens or 20 together, and at last in such crowds that they seemed to fill the whole forest. Alice got behind a tree for fear of being run over and watched them go by. She thought that in all her life she had never seen soldiers so uncertain on their feet. They were always tripping over something or other, and whenever one went down, several more always fell over him, so that the ground was soon covered with little heaps of men. Then came the horses. Having 4 feet, these managed rather better than the foot soldiers, but even they stumbled now and then, and it seemed to be regular rule that whenever a horse stumbled, the rider fell off instantly. The confusion got worse every moment, and Alice was very glad to get out of the wood into an open place where she found the White King seated on the ground, busily writing in his memorandum book. I've sent them all, the king cried in a tone of delight on seeing Alice. Did you happen to meet any soldiers, my dear, as you came through the wood? Oh, yes, I did, said Alice. Several thousand, I should think. 4,207. That's the exact number, the king said, referring to his book. I couldn't send all the horses, you know, because 2 of them are wanted in the game. And I haven't sent the 2 messengers either. They're both gone to the town. Just look along the road and tell me if you can see either of them. I see nobody on the road, said Alice. I only wish I had such eyes, the king remarked in a fretful tone, to be able to see nobody. And at that distance, too. Why, it's as much as I can do to see real people by this light. Next. Next.
Sorry, who's next?
I guess that's me. But I have to. I want to say something about what you just read.
Okay.
That you know, because these sections are actually very, very rich. But this when Alice says, "I see nobody on the road,"
Yeah.
I only wish I had such eyes, the king remarked in a fretful tone.
Yeah.
Able to see nobody.
Oh,
So this is an example of Carol really, really pushing us right up against the meaning of words, big time.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And also the way we say often, if you go someplace, you say, there was no one there, you know? And it's the same thing. How can there's no one, there's no one there. But we say it as Carol is doing here, like, you know, there's nobody there, there's no one there.
Right,
there was
right.
there was no one in the place when I went in, you know.
Well, that's like me. Of course, I'm kind of a wise ass, but you know, if I go, let's say, to a meeting and only one of the person shows up, and the
Yeah.
next person says, "Where is everybody?"
Yeah.
And I always have to say, "Well, I'm part of everybody."
Yeah.
And the nobody in the story is capitalized N, like it is the name of somebody.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, it's deliberate.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
what is that? Nobody in something. What is that?
Nobody.
It's
Yeah.
in something.
So you know, I think these little things are actually very important, and we. So, for example, there's a whole therapy where the therapist working with someone who comes to them with a problem, that every time the patient uses a pronoun, the therapy is, What do you mean by he? What do you mean by she? Who is she? And in other words, it's called getting the references for all of the pronouns and things like never. He never listens to me. So the therapist would say, "Are you sure never?
Hmm.
Does he ever listen to you?" And this is the therapy. The therapy is making people aware of how they use language. So, all right. Anyway, all that blah, blah, blah. I will actually read the text now. Thank you for indulging me. All this was lost on Alice, who was still looking intently along the road, shading her eyes with one hand. "I see somebody now," she exclaimed at last, "but he's coming very slowly. And what curious attitudes he goes into." For the messenger kept skipping up and down and wiggling like an eel as he came along with his great hands spread out like fans on each side. It's quite an image. "Not at all," said the king. "He's an Anglo-Saxon messenger, and those are Anglo-Saxon attitudes. He only does them when he's happy. His name is Haiga, or Maya. He pronounced it so it rhymed with Maya. Haya, Maya, Mayor, Hayer. Oh, I love my love with an H." Alice couldn't help beginning, "because he is happy. I hate him with an H because he is hideous. I fed him with ham sandwiches and hay. His name is Hayar, and he lives," next reader.
Lives on the hill, the king remarked simply, without the least idea that he was joining in the game, while Alice was still hesitating for the name of a town beginning with H. The other messengers called Hatta. I must have two, to come and go, one to come and one to go. "I beg your pardon," said Alice. "It isn't respectable to beg," said the king. "I only meant I didn't understand," said Alice, "why one to come and one to go." "Don't I tell you," the king repeated impatiently, "I must have two to fetch and carry, one to fetch and one to carry." At this moment the messenger arrived. He was far too much out of breath to say a word, and could only wave his hands about and make the most fearful face at the poor king. "This young lady loves you with an H," the king said, introducing Alice in the hope of turning off the messenger's attention from himself. But it was no use. The Anglo-Saxon attitudes only got more extraordinary every moment, while the great eyes rolled wildly from side to side. "You alarm me," said the king. "I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich." On which the messenger, to Alice's great amusement, opened a bag that hung around his neck and handed a sandwich to the king, who devoured it greedily. "Another sandwich," said the king. "There's nothing but hay left now," said the messenger, peeping into the bag. "Hay, then," the king murmured in a faint whisper. Alice was glad to see it revived him in a good deal. "There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint," he remarked to her as he munched away. "I should think throwing cold water over you would be better," Alice suggested, "or some sal volatile." "I didn't say there was nothing better," said the king. The king replied, "I said there was nothing like it," which Alice did not venture to deny. Next, please, Joan.
Who did you pass on the road? The king went on, holding out his hand to the messenger for some more hay. "Nobody," said the messenger. Quite right, said the king. This young lady saw him too. So, of course, nobody walks slower than you. I do my best, said the messenger said in a sullen tone. I'm sure nobody walks much faster than I do. He can't do that, said the king, or else he'd have been here first. However, now you've got your breath, you may tell us what happened in the town. I'll whisper it, said the messenger, putting his hands to his mouth in the shape of a trumpet and stooping so as to get close to the king's ear. Alice was sorry for this, for she wanted to hear the news too. However, instead of whispering, he simply shouted at the top of his voice, "They're at it again!" "Do you call that a whisper?" cried the poor king, jumping up and shaking himself. "If you do such a thing again, I'll have you buttered." It went through and through my head like an earthquake. It would have had to be a very tiny earthquake, thought Alice. Who are at it again? She ventured to ask. Why, the lion and the unicorn, of course, said the king. Fighting for the crown? Yes, to be sure, said the king. And the best of the joke is that it's my crown all the while. Let's run and see them. And they trotted off, Alice repeating to herself as she ran the words of the old song. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread, some gave them brown, some gave them plum cake, and drummed them out of town. Donna?
Hmm.
And does
Hmm.
one that wins get the crown? She asked, as well as she could, for the long run was putting her quite out of breath. Dear me, no, said the king. What an idea. Would you be good enough, Alice panted out, after running a little further, to stop a minute, just to get one's breath? I'm good enough, the king said, only I'm not strong enough. You see, a minute goes by so fearfully quick. You might as well try to stop a bandersnatch. Alice had no more breath for talking, so they trotted on in silence till they came in sight of a great crowd, in the middle of which the lion and the unicorn were fighting. They were in such a cloud of dust that at first Alice could not make out which was which, but she soon managed to distinguish the unicorn by his horn. They placed themselves close to the other messenger, pretending what fight, with a cup of tea in one hand, bread and butter in the other. He's only just out, and he hadn't finished his tea when he was sent in, I whispered to Alice. And they only give them oyster shells in there. So you see, he's very hungry and thirsty. How are you, dear child? He went on, putting his arm affectionately round Hatta's neck. Hatta looked round and nodded, and went on with his bread and butter. Were you happy and pleasant, dear child? Said Haya. Hatta looked around once more, and this time a tear or two trickled down his cheek, but not a word would he say. Speak, can't you? Haya cried impatiently. But Hatta only munched away and drank some more tea. Speak, won't you? Cried the king. How are they getting on with the fight? Hatta made a desperate effort and swallowed a large piece of bread and butter. They're getting on very well, he said in a choking voice. Each of them has been down about 87 times. Then I suppose they'll soon bring the white bread and the brown, Alice ventured to remark. It's waiting for him now, said Hatta. This is a biscuit, and I'm eating. Next, please.
Oh.
There was a pause in the fight just then, and the lion and the unicorn sat down, panting, while the king called out, 10 minutes allowed for refreshments. Haya and Hatta set to work at once, carrying round trays of white and brown bread. Alice took a piece to taste, but it was very dry. I don't think they'll fight any more today, the king said to Hatta. Go and order the drums to begin. And Hatta went bounding away like a grasshopper. For a minute or two, Alice stood silent, watching him. Suddenly, she brightened up. Look, look, she cried, pointing eagerly. There's the White Queen running across the country. She came flying out of the wood over yonder. How fast those queens can run. There's some enemy after her, no doubt, the king said, without even looking round. The wood's full of them. But aren't you going to run and help her? Alice asked, very much surprised at his taking it so quietly. No use, no use, said the king. She runs so fearfully quick. You might as well try to catch a bandersnatch. But I'll make a memorandum about her, if you like. She's a dear good creature. He repeated softly to himself as he opened his memorandum book. Do you spell creature with a double E? At this moment, the unicorn sauntered by them with his hands in his pockets. I had the best of it this time, he said to the king, just glancing at him as he passed. A little, the king replied, rather nervously. You shouldn't have run him through with your horn, you know. It didn't hurt him, said the unicorn said carelessly, and he was going on when his eye happened to fall upon Alice. He turned round instantly and stood for some time, looking at her with an air of deepest disgust. What is this? He said at last. This is a child, Haya replied eagerly, coming in front of Alice to introduce her and spreading out both his hands towards her in an Anglo-Saxon attitude. We only found it today. It's as large as life and twice as natural. Anne?
Okay. I always thought they were fabulous monsters, said the unicorn. Is it alive? Can talk, said Haya solemnly. The unicorn looked dreamily at Alice and said, Talk, child. Alice could not help her lips curling up into a smile as she began. Do you know, I always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters too. Never saw one alive before. Well, now that we have seen each other, said the unicorn, if you believe in me, I'll believe in you. Is that a bargain? Yes, if you like, said Alice. Come fetch out the plum cake, old man, the unicorn went on, turning from her to the king. None of your brown bread for me. Certainly, certainly, the king muttered, and beckoned to Aya. Aya. Open the bag, he whispered. Quick, not that one. That's full of hay. Aya took a large cake out of the bag and gave it to Alice to hold, while he got out a dish and carving knife. How they all came out of it, Alice couldn't guess. It was just like a conjuring trick, she thought. The lion had joined them, and while this was going on, he looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were half shut. What's that? He said, blinking lazily at Alice, and speaking in a deep, hollow tone that sounded like the tolling of a great bell. Ah, what is it now? The unicorn cried eagerly. You'll never guess. I couldn't. The lion looked at Alice wearily. Are you animal or vegetable or mineral? He said, yawning at every word. It's a fabulous monster, the unicorn cried out before Alice could reply. Then hand round the plum cake monster, the lion said, lying down and putting his chin on his paws. And sit down, both of you, to the king and the unicorn. Fair play with the cake, you know. The king was evidently very uncomfortable at having to sit down between the two great creatures, but there was no other place for him. What a fight we might have at the crown now, the unicorn said, looking shyly up at the crown, which the poor king was nearly shaking off his head. He trembled so much. Katrina?
I should win easily, said the lion. I'm not so sure of that, said the unicorn. Why, I beat you all round the town, you chicken, the lion replied angrily, half getting up as he spoke. Here the king interrupted to prevent the quarrel going on. He was very nervous, and his voice quite quavered. All round the town, he said. That's a good long way. Did you go by the old bridge or the marketplace? You get the best view by the old bridge. I'm sure I don't know, said the lion growled out as he lay down again. There was too much dust to see anything. What a time the monster is getting up that cake. Alice had seated herself on the bank of the little brook with a great dish on her knees and was sawing away diligently with the knife. It's very provoking, she said in reply to the lion. She was getting quite used to being called the monster. I've cut several slices already, but they always join on again. You don't know how to manage looking glass cakes, the unicorn remarked. Hand it round first and cut it afterwards. This sounded nonsense, but Alice very obediently got up and carried the dish round, and the cake divided itself into 3 pieces as she did so. "Now cut it up," said the lion as she returned to her place with the empty dish. "I say this isn't fair," cried the unicorn as Alice sat with the knife in her hand, very much puzzled how to begin. "The monster has given the lion twice as much as me." "She's kept none of it for herself anyhow," the lion said. "Did you like the plum cake monster? Do you like plum cake monster?" But before Alice could answer him, the drums began. Next, please. Anna.
Who, me? Okay, but before Alice could answer him, the drums began. Where the noise came from, she couldn't make out. The air seemed full of it, and it rang through and through her head till she felt quite deafened. She started to her feet and sprang across the little brook in her terror, and had just time to see the lion and the unicorn rise to their feet with angry looks at being interrupted in their feast, before she dropped to her knees and put her hands over her ears, vainly trying to shut out the dreadful uproar. I can't read what these next three lines are. If that doesn't drum them out of town, she thought to herself, nothing ever will. End of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something in these three lines that are such tiny print?
No, they're just asterisks.
Oh, okay.
It's just straight for some reason at the just before the chapters end.
Yeah,
It's the last couple of chapters. There's this
yeah,
thing of 3 lines of asterisks.
okay.
My book has no difference.
No,
You
Mm.
don't have the asterisks in there?
no.
Oh, but before, yeah. Go on. I'm sorry.
You
Are we
do
gonna
have
con-
the asterisks in there.
We're going to continue.
Those asterisks were used as a page break when we started.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Before we go on, I mean, there's a lot in here, and I'll just ask a basic question. What in the world is Lewis Carroll doing? I mean, yeah, I'm sure this would amuse a child.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, it seems like he's doing something else in addition to amusing a child.
Oh, he is. He's has a chess game going here.
Well, I mean, that's a clever trick, but I mean, it seems to be there's more going on than the chess game. The chess
Oh,
game, at least to me, is just a framing technique.
yeah.
I
Structuring
got the
technique.
I got the impression from what was being read that the lion was more in charge than the king.
Okay.
He's playing on the two king and the lion, king of the jungle sort of stuff. I don't. It just gave me that impression. He was certainly more in charge of what was going on.
It says here
Mhm.
it was widely believed in England that Tenniel's lion and unicorn in the illustration for this scene were intended as caricatures of Gladstone and Disraeli, respectively. There's no proof of this, but they do resemble Tenniel's punch cartoons of the two political figures who often sparred with each other.
Oh, okay. So if you were living in England at that time, you would
Mhm.
probably associate
You would refer
and you read Punch.
Mhm.
But this whole thing, I mean, where they're calling Alice a monster,
Mhm.
you know, is kind of interesting. And then
Yeah,
it doesn't take her too long before she realizes that she's being viewed as a monster.
yeah, yeah. I just like that meeting between Alice and the unicorn, and the fact that the unicorn called her a fabulous monster,
Uh-huh.
where humans would normally call the unicorn a fabulous monster. You know, in myth and everything. You know, so he switches it around from the unicorn's point of view, I think. But yeah, I just like that the way they met and they were looking at each other, you know, and the puzzlement of the unicorn when he
Mm-hmm.
saw a child.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually a very sophisticated way of getting across a very complicated idea,
Yeah.
which is that, whatever we're not used to,
Mm.
we're going to first frame in our available general categories. So, the unicorn obviously has a category called monster, and he's never seen a child before, and so he uses the category of monster to designate her. And then he seems to become kind of tolerant of her monstrousness.
Yeah.
And what's the thing with the Bandersnatch? Bandersnatch is mentioned 2 times in this chapter.
Bandersnatch, yeah.
You might as well try to stop a Bandersnatch.
From Jabberwocky. The Frumious Bandersnatch.
The Frumious Bandersnatch. Okay. Yeah, I'm good enough, the king said, only I'm not strong enough. You see, a minute goes by so fearfully quick. You might as well try to stop a Bandersnatch. Anyway.
I have an image here of the Royal Standard of Scotland. And can you?
Oh, yeah. The lion and the unicorn.
Lion and a unicorn.
Yeah.
I don't know what the whole basis of the thing is, but I just find it interesting that Carol is using it.
Okay.
Lion was England and the unicorn was Scotland.
Mm.
Is that an English statement on the reality of the country of Scotland? An imaginary.
I would certainly take it as Carol's comment on it.
Yeah.
Here's another note. If Carroll intended his lion and unicorn to represent Gladstone and Disraeli, then this dialogue takes on an obvious meaning. Carroll, who was conservative in his political views and did not care for Gladstone, composed 2 remarkable anagrams on the full name, William Ewart Gladstone. They are, "Wilt tear down all images." I don't get this. And "Wild agitator" means, well, see the diaries of Lewis Carroll. That's a book.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
I think they're guessing, I think you could probably, pick other things.
I don't know, having that, well, they had the standard of the lion and the unicorn is,
According to the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, rivalry between the lion and unicorn goes back for thousands of years. The nursery rhyme is popularly supposed to have arisen in the early 17th century when the union of Scotland and England resulted in a new British coat of arms on which the Scottish unicorn and the British lion appear, as they do today, as the 2 supporters of the royal arms. That's interesting.
I have to think about the idea that the unicorn represents Scotland. Well,
Fabulous monster.
All righty. Well, it is 2:33, and so we will gather.
Oh my goodness. That was fast.
Time flies, having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we start at chapter 8 next time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Very
In
good.
my book, we did some 37 pages today,
Mm.
and there are 43 left.
Oh, good.
Okay, so prepare your Mrs. Dalloway.
Yes.
That's coming fast. It's coming as fast as the Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
I'll start now.
Thank you very
Alrighty.
much, folks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
There we
Bye.
go.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you,
right.
Duncan.
That's why I can't find it. There we go. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.